Right, so I've just come back from Spain today. Obviously been on holiday, the tank's been left, so it's got a little bit dirty. It's not had a water change, so today's video is going to be all about tank maintenance for the African cichlid. So I'll show you how I go about my maintenance. We'll do a water change, do some cleaning, take some bits in and out of the sump, and just make sure everything's running spick and span again. So when I do the maintenance on the tank, what I'll always start with first is the cleaning. Reason being for this is obviously whatever we clean and scrape off the rocks or the glass is going to go into the water column. So if we do that first, then we can take it out when we do the water change. So whatever's left floating around in the water, all the crap and dirt, we can then take out with the water change. So always clean your glass first and clean your rocks first. Don't do it after you've done a water change, because then you're just scrubbing all that crap into your fresh water. So we'll start with the glass. What I use is one of these, which is a paint scraper, or wallpaper scraper. So it covers a lot of surface on the glass. It gets the job done quick. You have got to watch them, because what you don't want to happen is if you use them, make sure you dry them and stuff, because they will rust. And obviously you don't want to be putting rust into your water column. So after a bit, you do need to change them and get a new one. But they're about £2 from a shop up the road from me. So you can pick them up pretty cheap. And they do a really good job of cleaning the glass and scraping all the algae you get off the glass. So that's what we'll do first. We'll start with the glass cleaning. Simply in, and then we'll scrape down into. And just be careful as well, if you've got sand and you're using a scraper, when you get near to the bottom, make sure you let the sand settle when you get near to the bottom, because if you get the sand trapped between this and your glass, it can scratch your glass. So you've got to be careful when you get near the bottom. If you're disturbing that bed, that you let the sand settle, because you don't want to get all scratch marks all over the inside of your glass. And one more thing, if you've got an acrylic tank, don't use a metal scraper, because it'll scratch it to pieces. And when you come to the corners and you come to the edges, always be careful with these tools when you get near the silicone, because you don't want to nick the silicone and create a little gap for water to get in, because you weaken the bond. So go a bit slower when you get to these corner pieces, and then obviously avoid you having any sort of issues majorly with your tank. Job done on that. All the front looks cleared, all the algae's gone. You usually get a majority of it build up at the bottom. That's why you've got to be careful with this when you're at the bottom with the sand, because that tends to be where you get the most algae building up over time. So you do have to put a little bit more elbow grease into it when you get nearer the bottom, but just be really careful with that sand, because I have done it before where it scratched my tank, and it's not a nice feeling. Good thing is we've had no fatalities. So my uncle has been coming and checking in on the tank. So he's come round, I've shown him what to do. He's kept an eye on everything, and he's fed the fish as well. So they've had a good feed, they've been looked after. But obviously I wouldn't expect him to do the water changes and the cleaning on the tank. So next thing to do, just get yourself a toothbrush, and then you're always going to get algae build up on your rocks. Especially things like diatoms at the early stages as well. So if you just go over them with a brush, I do it once a week. It keeps it from looking ugly, and it stops it from taking over. So if you left this for so long, all these, you can see it already, the rocks are turning brown, but you get a toothbrush on them, really effective. It does a really good job cleaning everything. Another thing that's going to help you with the sort of discoloration of your rocks with the algae and the diatoms is only have your lights on when you need to. I mean, I've only got them on now because I'm filming, but usually I'd only have them on from sort of 5 o'clock till 9 when I'm back from work and I'm downstairs in the house and I can see the tank. So if you keep your lights down low, it does really keep this at bay. But because I do a lot of filming on the tank and I have the lights on, then I do get quite a bit of algae on the rocks, so I do have to clean them quite often. Always give the overflow a clean as well, because this gets really mucky. It's because it's right under the light in the middle, so it gets a lot of light and a lot of stuff ends up growing on it. So if you leave that, it looks hideous. The rocks aren't actually as bad as I was expecting. I think it's because before I went on holiday, I've changed my light settings so that they're not on as high. So the growth on the rocks isn't as much as I expected it to be. Which is good, because it's less work to clean. So although getting your hands in the tank and doing this with a toothbrush and scrubbing it off, it can seem quite a tedious task. The good thing is if you get the algae when it's just started sort of establishing on the rocks quite early on, if you get it off then, it stops it really taking a hold, because the longer you leave it on there, the firmer grip it's going to get on the rocks and the harder it is to actually scrub it off. So if you just make a habit of every time you do a water change, just give it a quick flick over with the brush everything, can stop you having really tough algae issues further down the line where it starts getting really long and horrible. When it's quite new on the rocks, it tends to come off quite easy. It just sort of brushes off like dust. Whereas if you let it establish on there, then you have to start pulling it off with your fingers and stuff. The toothbrush doesn't quite do it the same. But yeah, it's one of the staples I do with tank maintenance. Clean your rocks, because it'll stop you having algae breakouts that get really bad further down the line. So when it comes to the actual water change itself, I just do it old school. So siphon, hose, suck the hose, get the siphon going, straight into the sink. But what I'll use is this. So we attach this to the hose. And what this will let me do is siphon the sandbed while I'm doing the water change, so I can get all the crap off the sandbed. What I do is I won't do the whole sandbed in one go. So I'll divide the tank into 3, and every time I do a water change, or every other time, like I said, it's not siphoning your sand you do need to do to keep a clean sandbed and stop any nasty things growing and getting into your water column. But if you just do it in little intervals, so like I'll do this section here today, and then the next time I do a water change, I'll do this bit, and then I'll do that bit. And then you're not clouding up your whole tank, you're not causing yourself a massive job, and you're still doing what needs to be done. So we'll create the siphon with this now. Always make sure you're wearing a shit shirt when you do this as well, because obviously you're going to get covered in water and muck. So we'll create the siphon. So coming. And then we'll do, this will start changing the water. But like you can see, and then when it starts sucking that sand up, you just put a kink in your hose, and then it'll drop it all back down again, and then undo the kink. And what it'll do is it cleans the sand, so it sucks all the crap out of the sand bed. I mean, you're bound to lose a little bit in the siphon, but it's not going to be to a point where you're going to need to start replacing your sand bed, as long as you make sure you're letting it drop back down. So like I said, when you disturb the sand bed, it clouds your water up, which is why you don't really want to do it all at once, unless you've washed all your sand first. But I didn't wash my sand when I put this in. I just put the sand in and sort of filled it up slowly so that it wouldn't cloud the tank up. So when I do disturb it now, you get a bit of milkiness come out of it, which is why I'll do it in little bits. And then that little bit that comes out, once I've done the water change on it anyway, it clears the water up. Get it in between your rocks as well, so the siphon will suck out any detritus that's sat in between your rocks. And the more often you do it, the less work it actually is, because the longer you leave it before you do these things, the more crap you've got to clean and get out of the water. So if you're doing it every week, it takes you 45 minutes tops. Might take you a bit longer with the water change, but when the water's coming out, you don't have to do anything, you just sit and wait. So all in all, labour wise, it takes you about half an hour. Right, so we'll rest the siphon there. We'll make sure it's not on the sand bed, so it's not sucking all the substrate up. And then I'll usually wait for it to come about 15 to 20% of the way down on the tank. Obviously, we've got more volume in the sump, but I'll wait for it to come about 20% of the way down on the tank, and then we'll start filling it up with some fresh water then. Right, so that's the sweet spot. That's where I want it to be. So we'll start by breaking the siphon on this. So we'll just pull it out, disconnect the hose, and we'll thread that back through. So the way, when I fill it back up, I'll do it straight from the sump. So I'll stick it in there. Reason for it is, what I can do is I'll start filling the sump up, and then I'll just turn the return pump on, and then it'll just start pumping it all back into the top section anyway. But I can keep an eye, when I do it through the sump at the bottom, I can keep an eye, because this is where my temperature controller is. I can keep an eye on how much it's fluctuating the temperature of the tank when I'm filling it up, to make sure that obviously the temperature isn't going all over the place. Also as well, make sure you use tap safe. Don't just fill it up with tap water, don't be a donut. Use tap safe, you need it. If you leave the chlorine in your tap water, it's not good for your fish. It's not good for the bacteria in your filtration. You know, that sort of stuff that's in your tap water can kill that bacteria. That's what it's there to do, kill bacteria. So make sure you're using tap safe all the time. So we're filling the bottom up now. You can see the return pump's putting it back into the tank from the sump. And then as I'm doing that, I'm keeping my eye on the temperature controller as well, just making sure that it's not dropping substantially anyway. I mean, we'd expect a couple of degrees with a water change, but make sure that it's not going to be something that's going to be detrimental. I mean, I'll give it a little bit of a hot water boost if it's getting too low. Which, if you can avoid, do. Right, she's done. Done and dusted. So we'll tidy up this and we'll move on to the last thing. Right, the last thing you want to keep your eye on, especially with the sun, is your filter floss. So I did change this top one just before I went away, but the bottom one might need doing. So the reason you do need to check this is, although it is in the filtration media, you still need to make sure it's clean, especially your filter floss, because the floss, what that will do is it will catch the majority of the large particulates out of your water, so the poo, food, things like that. And if it's all well and good it staying in there and it catching it, but if you leave it in there, it is going to decay and it's going to put, you know, bad things into your water column. So you're going to get a lot of nitrates and phosphates coming out of this if you do leave it there and never change it. So you do want to keep your eye on the filter floss. This is still looking all right to me, so I'm not going to change it for now, but I have got one here ready for when it does need doing. But it's still looking fairly clean. But you can tell when this gets really gunked up and really horrible, it is something you need to keep an eye on. So I'm not going to change it now because I think it's got another week or two left in it. But do keep your eye on it. Right, so there we go. We've all caught up. Tank's looking nice and clean. We've done a water change. We've checked the filtration. So yeah, we're all done and dusted. That's the weekly maintenance that I think we should be doing with an African cichlid tank, along with obviously water testing and things like that as well. But they are messy fish. They do produce a lot of waste, and the tanks will get dirty if you don't look after them properly. So yeah, that's just what you do on a weekly basis. That's a casual Saturday for me. But obviously with me being on holiday, we're doing a little bit earlier this week because they've not had a good clean. But yeah, hopefully you picked up a few tips that you can add to your regime.